Something else I was going to tell you. Oh, schedule, waiting for Robin a wrist to put the schedule up, so when he's got a moment. Oh, what noise! So as soon as Robin a wrist has a moment, he will put the schedule up. So that's the hold up, and I think he might be out at a conference. Right, you've been waiting for hours and hours and hours along with everybody else. I'm so sorry.
Trying in the shade.
And you got to speak to our Australian lovely Tasha and Dee, so that's good.
Not everybody.
All right, so tell us your name.
Kelly Mars.
Kelly Mars. And now, how many children do you have?
I have 3 children. My daughter 31, 32, and then my son 29, and then my youngest 23. My youngest son 23 is the most affected.
But do you feel like they're all affected?
Yes, I feel like they've all been affected. And
we called it my 2 children, but it should have been my 2 children.
Well, my daughter, that's questionable, but the Rogam, I received Rogam injections during each one of my pregnancies and after each one of my pregnancies before I went home. And I do believe the 3rd time with my 3rd child, I think the doctor said, we want to make sure this Rogam really works. Let's give you an extra one. And then, of course, they give you one after you give birth. And I breastfed all 3 of my children.
We need an expert on Rogam. Rogam, I feel, is the not talked about big problem.
What I found in researching after...
Oh, you are my expert.
Well,
nice.
What I found in researching after Colin, after all the problems arose with Colin, the mercury was 49.9%, and it eliminates from your body through bodily fluids, so it voids after approximately 4 weeks, which he became very, very ill with projectile vomiting. He was fine for the first 4.5 weeks that we brought him home from the hospital. He seemed to be fine. I'm not so sure. So the projectile vomiting started, and we weren't sure. We ruled out the flu. We ruled out this, that, and the other. And we decided it probably was my milk, but I wasn't doing anything different. My husband kept telling me, it's your milk, it's your milk.
Your husband? What's he got to do with it? Is he a doctor?
No, he's not.
He just decided it was your milk.
He just thought.
Oh, crikey. Can't even imagine that. Are you still with this guy?
He's not here. He's deceased.
Okay.
But
all right, I won't be mean then.
Well, no, that's fine. But yes, I thought that was mean too. So after researching, yes, it was exiting my body, and it was in my milk, and Colin projectile vomited. So we, after a week, took him into the ER, and they started running tests, and they emergency transferred him to Children's Hospital here in the city, where they had to rehydrate him because he was dehydrated from having projectile vomited for a week. At 5 weeks, he had emergency surgery, and the doctors came to us at that time, and they wanted to know if he was our first son, and we said, no, we haven't. So, well, usually this happens with the first son, and I didn't think much about it, and I still wasn't thinking it was the Rogam shot at that time. I had no clue until I did the research later and realized that it probably was. So he had the surgery, and they released us. I continued to breastfeed. I debated on the shots, but I continued. We had all of his immunizations, which he had 10 more series of immunizations than my other 2 kids had, because he was born in 94 and Dylan was born in 88. So there were 10 more series by that time the government required. So I did know that. I learned that later in research too, that he had many more immunizations. And first year in school, they noticed, the teacher noticed first grade, and we were still in denial. We were in a lot of denial, even though we'd had him to the psychiatrist at 2. He'd had sensory processing disorders. He had oppositional defiant. We couldn't get him in a bathtub. He wouldn't brush his teeth. He didn't potty train until he was a week before kindergarten. It just, all the signs were there.
Mm-hmm.
But he was on the forefront of the autism because of, he was one of the first ones, 91 and 94. So it was not identified. The psychiatrist that we had him out at 2 said he was angry. And I thought, no, that's not it. There's something else. And we never did get a definite diagnosis until he was older and began to have all the problems that he had in school. And we ended up homeschooling, had homebound teachers, and it just goes on. But in the meantime, his allergies, he was allergic to everything, he and his brother both. So we took him in for allergy shots for years. And I think that's what was the final straw for Colin, were the allergy shots.
Tell people who don't know the dangers of allergy shots, because I think there are still people that, I hear them in Austin the whole time, gotta go and get my allergy shots.
We had no idea. They mailed them to us. I put them in the refrigerator when he had to go get the allergy shots. We took the shots with us, and they gave them to him. Until I realized that the sneezing in the morning, which he sneezes approximately 50 times to 100. There were times I would have to pick him up at school because he couldn't stop sneezing. And I thought that was because the school was by a landfill, and the landfill was putting off emissions, many emissions, mercury emissions. And I'm still not convinced that the school didn't make his condition worse. I thought it worsened his condition, and I did talk to the principal about that because the landfill and the school were so close. They can't even get trees to grow at that school. Another story. So we ended up homeschooling, but the allergy shots, I don't think they made that big of a difference. His allergies were still just, continually worsen. They're still bad. So we made it through. When he was 16, he withdrew from homebound. He had a homebound teacher. The school did accommodate him after I threatened. They did accommodate him. And we tried some other schools. We tried a smaller school, country school. We tried several country schools that were smaller and he did do better in a small class than he did in the larger classes, but he was still there were problems. There were many problems besides the health problems. When he turned 21, I think maybe the year before, around that time, he was in the hospital 8 times in 2 years. Follow up to that, there were probably, in the next year, probably 4 times. In this last, it's just been twice in the hospital, in and out of the hospital with many diagnoses. The first diagnoses came from his DO, which was pervasive developmental disorder, of course OCD, ADD, ADD. There was not much hyperactivity. Social phobia, social anxiety, major depressive disorder. The list goes on. And as he got older, those diagnoses, some changed. Very heartbreaking diagnoses. In the meantime, I'm trying to work. We're all trying to work. And it's a 24/7 job. The sleep, well, when he hit puberty, which was 6th grade, many sleep difficulties. That's when the up all night, slept all day. just problem after problem. I had sleep issues. My other son, he had so many health issues. He's a machine when he was 2 years old.
That's crazy.
Yes, which later led to, of course, other stimulant drugs, or therefore self-medicating, just on and on and on. There's just so many medications. He was on a antibiotic constantly. The other one, we called him the boy in the bubble, upper respiratory constant. But I was very anal about their shots, very on time.
What made you stop? What point?
Stop the shots?
Yeah. What point? What was the last vaccine one of your children had?
I want to say that Colin had his shot before he went to the 7th grade, but what actually stopped me, and I always instinctively, when they would slide that piece of paper across the table at the health department to waive me suing them in case something tragic happened to my child, instinctively I thought, this is not right. Why do I have to sign a waiver saying that I'm not going to sue them if something happens to my child? I signed it. There was one time I almost walked out, and I should have. But I think the final straw, I was reading the Rolling Stones magazine and came across the RFK Jr. expose. Mm-hmm. And at this time I had started trying to find other children that had similarities to my son. He was functioning, very odd, peculiar. Even the schools would call, and they couldn't actually. The first grade teacher, she said she couldn't put her finger on it. Later on, the school just said, your kid's weird. And it was, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe a little weird.
What about today?
Today.
Move today. What are these kids like today? Or adults like today? Your babies?
Dylan is constantly sick. The boy in the bubble is constantly sick.
How old is he now?
He's 29.
So 29.
Just turned 29.
Does he have a girlfriend? Oh, he hasn't been married?
He has not been married. He's the one that lives in Texas. He
has a baby.
But
is the baby vaccinated?
Well, we just went round and round about that because they were going to try to catch her up to get her in daycare, and she's almost 4. And no, they did get an exemption. They
Good.
filed for an exemption, which they got because I threw a temper tantrum. And he stays sick, and he finally did admit, Mom, this really is affecting my life and my career, and it has affected.
And what is his career? What does he do?
He drives a truck right now, but he had, intended on going to college, and because of the self-medicating and...
Listen, it's not a bad life driving a truck.
No.
No brainwashing.
Yeah.
No mandatory vaccines. We're good, aren't we?
That's good. He doesn't have to have those.
He's healthy, and, well, he should be healthy. Semi-healthy. And so what about your next child?
He stays home, has no friends.
He's how old?
23.
Okay, and he has a diagnosis?
The latest?
Yeah.
The latest ones? Schizophrenia, bipolar, of course the social phobia, social anxiety.
Is he medicated?
I asked the doctor to please put him on the least amount of medication because he would come out of the hospital and just be a zombie. He was a zombie. It was like living with just a body.
So he just sleeps during the day?
He sleeps about 15 hours a day. We see his therapist and his psychiatrist, and that's what his life consists of. He's up most nights. His days and nights have never, from probably the age of 12, have never been regular. I never sleep. The police come in and out of our house because things happen, and
so you're stressed out. Do you don't have a partner?
No, I don't.
So you're really now. Do you know
It's
these
me.
peeps out here? Are you friends with all these people?
I had the opportunity to meet lots of interesting,
Good.
very nice people today. Very,
Good.
very nice. I met the couple, the woman that wrote the book.
Yeah, lovely lady.
Yes,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful family.
You should stay in contact. You guys need each other.
Yes. But it is very hard. I ended up, I left my job because Colin's care is 24/7. There's not a lot of communication. He never has, he can't, I mean, he speaks, but it's not a lot. And they tell me he was probably age-wise about 13. We don't know if he's going to, when he leaves in the car, if he's going to come back with the car, or if he's going to walk home. Well, that's the scary part. Yes, at 19 he did get his license, but he locks the keys and then he walks, and instead of using the phone to communicate, he'd rather not, and he doesn't watch TV, and there's just a lot of, you know, he plays the piano beautifully, but he can't peel a banana. So it is, you know, neurologically we have a long way to go, and I don't know that we're going to get there, because you know, when I get up in the morning in the winter, we may have a snowdrift in the house from the door being open all night, or the door may have been left open all day in 107-degree weather. We don't know. I don't know what I'm going home to. I don't know when I leave.
What do you do?
I worked as a substitute for two large schools, two large districts, and I also worked for two children's hospitals, one mental hospital and one physical cerebral palsy hospital. And
do they make you get vaccinated?
Well,
you work in a mental hospital,
yes.
as they call them. They want you to have Hep B because they're very dangerous people.
Yes. Actually, the schools ask you to get that subbing.
I hope you're not doing it.
No, I did not. No.
There can't be any job worth. I'd rather you worked at whatever the place, Arby's or whatever it is down the road, than that.
I had to sign off on the flu shot at my last job, and they wanted to know why I did not want to get the flu shot, and I wrote the Marisol on there, and I put spell check that, and they came back, giggled and laughed at me, one of my managers, and he said, well, I don't know what that is. I said, well, it's mercury. And they just kind of laughed and acted like it was a joke, because everybody else was getting their flu shot, and I just said,
good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Now, what do you need for your boys? What would make your life a lot easier? What's needed?
You know, I try to travel with Colin to keep them in touch, because they were close, even though they were 6 years apart. They're still very close, and Colin needs friends, and he needs activities, and there's just not a lot of people that take interest. He had one friend, and you know, I've talked to his friend about Colin, and he said it's very heartbreaking for him, because, you know, Colin made it to a certain age, and then he just got to that age, and that was pretty much it. So, you know, as his friends got older, and you know, they just have gone their own way. He really has no activity in his life. There's very little activity. There's very little programs. There's very few programs, if any. There's a program in Norman that he refuses to attend. So even if there were programs, I can't say that he would go.
Of course. So what advice do you give to that young parent?
Oh, I tell them don't vaccinate.
That's the most honest answer anyone can give.
Yes, don't vaccinate. I've had a lot of people turn on me. I've heard a lot of hurtful things. I've heard a lot of and it's gotten to the point where I go, well, just read then. If you'll just read. Oh no, we're getting our shots. I'm like, well, you might, okay, that's fine, but just read. Read the inserts. That's a start. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And it's not just difficult for the person, it's difficult for the entire family. And it's a family disease, or it's impossible. I mean, it's almost impossible. And even though he's functioning, and people say, well, he is functioning, he can walk, he can talk. Do you worry about your son walking somewhere? We don't know where he's walking.
No, I totally understand that sometimes they're much more, the higher functioning have much more dangers sometimes than our children that are going to clearly be looked after.
He ran into someone in the McDonald's and didn't tell me. He came home and his brother took the car, and the police came knocking at the door, and they said, do you own this car? And I said, well, yes. And they said, well, were you at the McDonald's? I said, what did he do? Well, he hit someone and he left.
He hit someone?
Yes, because, which was, our fear before he started driving. And, my sister-in-law said, is he going to be able to drive? And I said, well, he's going to be able to drive, but what happens when he hits someone or someone hits him? We don't know. You don't know how they're going to react. So he admitted to hitting the lady. He just came on home.
Big worry. All right, well, listen, thank you so much. Some hearts and love. People are loving you.
Oh.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for traveling.
Well, no, we've got to stick together, and we've got to work out what we're going to do with the future.
Yes, I'm anxious to come see you guys.
You must come.